Hi. So today I thought I'd do another retrospective, because last time I did one on the Snyderverse, and it was more so about films that I had very mixed feelings about. But this time I'm going to be talking about movies that I really like. The Sherlock Holmes movies starring Iron Man and Lemony Snicket. No, wait, that's not right, is it? Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law. One of the reasons why I want to talk about these movies in particular is because when they came out, they faced a decent amount of criticism due to people being frustrated that they thought that Sherlock Holmes had been turned into a quote-unquote action hero. Personally, I disagree strongly with this notion, because Sherlock Holmes, whilst yes, is doing action hero-esque things in the movie, he is still Sherlock Holmes. It's just a different take on the character. And personally, I think this take on the character is actually really fun. These movies lean more into the comedic aspects of the character. I love how they show a lot of Sherlock Holmes' habits, but also satirize them at the same time, whilst making it seem cool. It's interesting. I love the relationship between him and Watson. The chemistry between him and Jude Law literally leaps off the screen. It is so hard not to like these two together. They do a great job, and I feel like that's been missing a bit from a lot of the older interpretations of these characters. See, I've always been a fan of the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes series from the 80s. However, I always thought there was a little bit something missing between him and David Burke. Not because they didn't have any chemistry, but they just didn't quite do it for me. But with RDJ and Jude Law, they have so much chemistry, and it genuinely is so funny. They are actually hilarious. These movies are a lot funnier than you may think that they are. Also, another thing about these films that I really think is a good draw in is the villains. Now, there's two big bads in these movies because there are only two movies, unfortunately. There is Lord Blackwood and James Moriarty. Now, everyone who likes Sherlock Holmes and has watched stuff before knows who James Moriarty is. He's the Joker to Sherlock Holmes' Batman. He's the Captain Hook to Sherlock Holmes' Peter Pan. He's the Swiper to Sherlock's Dora the Explorer. Point is, they don't like each other and they have good reasons not to. Now, a lot of people think that the Sherlock TV show is the definitive Sherlock, and also they think the Moriarty in those shows is the definitive Moriarty, and I can see the appeal. I think that they're great too. I like the TV series from the 2010s, but I think that James Moriarty in these films is a lot more intimidating. I also feel that these movies build to Moriarty's reveal a lot better. I know that there's only two films, but they do spend a decent amount of time in the first film showing that he has influence over a lot of the characters in these stories, but Sherlock just doesn't know who it is yet. And I think it worked really well, so that by the time it gets to the second film, you're like, all right, he knows who he is now, we can get straight into the story. And that way it leaves more room for the story to show Sherlock and Moriarty's rivalry instead of having to set it up in the film. But that is the second movie, which means there is another bad guy, and that is Lord Blackwood, who is an original bad guy who is not featured in any of the book series or any other interpretation of Sherlock Holmes media out there. So there's nothing to compare him to. There's no other actor or other performance we can say, oh, he isn't as good as this person. So that makes this a lot easier for me to talk about it. He's portrayed by Mark Strong, who is a great actor who's in a lot of popular movies. I'm sure you know him from Kingsman.
Country roads, take me home to the place.
And he's kind of scary in this movie. Lord Blackwood's kind of an occultist type of character who's into witchcraft and all this stuff. Because Sherlock is a very skeptic type of character. He's a detective. He analyzes things and draws fact from the things that he analyzes. So when you present a character that goes against everything that Sherlock Holmes believes, it makes for a really good dynamic. And that's another reason why these movies are so interesting. They present Sherlock with situations that he doesn't normally deal with in the book series. They're more grand, epic cases. They're either a crazy occultist that wants to start a revolution and control all of London, or they're a criminal mastermind that wants to start a war Sherlock, and maybe that's where this more action hero type thing comes from. It feels like you put Sherlock Holmes in a Mission Impossible story. Because he's going up against these great threats and he's doing a lot of physically demanding things, but I like that about these movies. I don't believe that Sherlock Holmes would only ever be tested mentally if he's going after bad guys and criminals and murderers. But I've talked enough about why the characters are cool. Let's talk more about the technical side of things. First of all, the way that these movies look is amazing. Because these films are set in the late 1800s, it gives so much opportunity to lean into the more gothic aesthetic for these films. Now, if you didn't know, these movies were directed by Guy Ritchie, who is very well known for doing many crime comedy thrillers, and he's a great director, he's very well respected, but he's never really gone for this sort of aesthetic before. In these movies, he loves to do this thing where when someone fires a gun, it'll zoom inside the gun and show how all the mechanisms are working that's leading to the bullet being shot out of it. And it looks so cool. Guy Ritchie has style, especially in a particular scene in Game of Shadows where everyone is running through a forest. Now, I won't tell you why they're running through a forest or what happens to anyone, but I will say, look out for that scene. It's amazing, and the direction is just. He also has a tendency to use a lot of non-linear storytelling, where he'll show something that happened at one point in time, and then he'll go back to show context for that bit. And I think it's so clever because when this happens, it's generally to do with the way that Sherlock Holmes perceives a series of events. And it's a good way of representing how scatterbrained this crazy detective is. Another technical side of this film I'd like to talk about is the score. Now, the soundtrack is composed by Hans Zimmer, who is a massive composer if you don't know who he is, who has worked on projects such as Sherlock Holmes, Dune, Kung Fu Panda, Top Gun Maverick, No Time to Die, Boss Baby, SpongeBob Movie, Wonder Woman, Gladiator, Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, Dark Phoenix, True Romance, Interstellar, Inception, The Lone Ranger, Skylanders Spyro's Adventure, Da Vinci Code, Dark Phoenix, The Creator, The Weatherman, Dark Knight Trilogy, Pirates of the Caribbean. So, in other words, he has done a lot of stuff. Whilst the main theme song of these movies, Discombobulate, can at times be a little bit repetitive, is still really, really catchy. And it's not like that's the only theme song there is. The music ranges from being super, super crazy to super, super intense, which helps demonstrate how these movies have a really great balance of lightheartedness and seriousness. So, have I made you want to watch these movies yet?
No?
Well, I hope now that this video is over that I've convinced you to watch the Sherlock Holmes movies. And if I haven't, don't fall asleep. But yeah, the Sherlock Holmes movies are films. And they do exist. And you can watch them. Anyway, bye!